When people talk about loss, they rarely mention the silence that follows it. They speak about tears, loneliness, memories that sting, but not the silence, the kind that settles into your walls, your clothes, even your heartbeat. That silence was all I heard the day I buried my husband, Daniel. 34 years of marriage carried down a church aisle in a wooden box. I sat in the front row, hands folded tightly, staring at the flowers resting on his casket. I didn't cry, not then. I felt as if the grief hadn't reached my body yet, like my heart was waiting for permission to break. The pastor spoke softly. My daughter held my arm. People from the neighborhood I barely knew handed me tissues I didn't use. I heard their whispers about his illness, our long marriage, even about the woman who had once tried to come between us decades ago. Her name was Marissa, a name I thought I had buried along with the past. The funeral ended, people left, and I stood alone beside his grave. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. I thought it must have been my daughter checking in on me, but when I pulled it out, my breath caught in my throat. The message came from an unknown number. "I'm sorry for what's about to happen. Stay strong." I stared at it, confused. Before I could even respond, another message arrived from a different number. "You have no claim to anything. Daniel promised it all to me. See you in court." My hands trembled. I knew that voice. It was her. After all these years, she had returned. But I didn't collapse. I didn't shout. I didn't drop the phone into the grass. Instead, I took a slow breath, because deep inside my purse, tucked behind a handkerchief, was the envelope Daniel had given me before he died. The envelope he told me never to lose. The one he said would protect everything. I didn't know it then, but that envelope would stop a thief in a courtroom. It would unravel lies whispered behind my back, and it would reveal a truth about my husband that would break me and save me at the same time. I drove home from the cemetery with my daughter, Claire, sitting quietly beside me. Neither of us spoke. Sometimes grief steals words, and sometimes it makes silence feel kinder. When we reached the house, she helped me out of the car and carried the casserole dishes the church ladies had given me earlier. I didn't have the heart to tell her I wouldn't touch any of them. Food tastes different when the person you love isn't sitting across the table. She kissed my cheek and said, "Mom, call me if you need anything." I nodded, and when she left, the house swallowed me whole. I placed my purse on the dining table, and the little envelope inside shifted slightly, as if reminding me it was still there. I didn't open it yet. Some part of me wasn't ready for more truth, not on the day I put my husband in the ground. I made myself a cup of tea, though I barely took 2 sips. My hands wouldn't stop trembling, not from grief alone, but from the messages I'd received, the warning and the threat. 2 messages from 2 different numbers, both pointing to something bigger than I understood. I set the cup aside and walked slowly through the house. Every corner held something of him. His jacket still hanging by the door, the book he hadn't finished on the coffee table, the faint scent of his cologne still tucked inside the hallway. I ran my fingers along the back of the couch where he liked to nap on Sunday afternoons. It still had the soft dip shaped by his weight. When someone lives with you for decades, they leave behind little shadows of themselves. You don't notice them until the person is gone. I sat on the sofa and stared at the fireplace. That was where Daniel had sat last winter, blanket around his shoulders, talking to me about things I didn't understand at the time. He'd been tired then. We both thought it was age catching up with him. We didn't know his heart was failing. But there was something else about that night. Something in the way he had squeezed my hand and said, "If anything happens to me, check the envelope, and don't let anyone take what's yours." Back then, I had laughed softly. "Dan, we're fine. Why do you sound like you're giving final instructions?" He had smiled a strange, sad smile. "Because sometimes people wait until a man's gone to show who they really are." I didn't realize he was talking about her. Back in the early years of our marriage, before Claire was even born, there had been a woman named Marissa. She worked at the same office as Daniel. She was loud, younger, pretty in a way I never bothered to be. She flirted with him at company events, laughed a little too hard at his jokes, and once, when she thought I wasn't looking, she slipped her hand along his arm. I was young then, only 28, and fragile in ways I didn't yet recognize. I had confronted Daniel with shaking hands, afraid of what he might say. He had looked at me, surprised and hurt, and told me the truth. "I don't want her. I chose you. I will always choose you." He cut ties with her soon after, or so I thought. She vanished from our lives, and I never saw her again. Until today. Until the message that slithered across my phone screen at his graveside. I stood up and walked to the dining table, pulling my purse toward me. I reached inside and touched the envelope, feeling the raised edges of Daniel's handwriting. Not sloppy, not rushed, neat and deliberate, like everything he did. Before I could open it, I heard 3 loud knocks at the front door. I froze, heart climbing into my throat. I opened the door slowly. A man stood there, middle-aged, clean-cut, suit too formal for the late afternoon. He offered a polite smile, the kind that didn't reach the eyes. "Mrs. Caldwell?" "Yes?" "I'm here on behalf of a client who wishes to discuss your upcoming probate proceedings." The air thinned around me. Probate? Already? The man adjusted his glasses. "She insists it's urgent. She claims she has reason to believe the current property and estate situation may not reflect your late husband's wishes." A cold wave ran through me. She. Of course it was her. I took a slow breath. "Tell your client I'll speak to her when I'm ready. Today is not the day." He opened his mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it. With a stiff nod, he handed me a crisp business card and stepped back toward his car. I closed the door and leaned my forehead against it. My hands shook again, but this time from a mixture of fear and anger. Not the loud, raging kind, but the quiet kind that sits deep in your chest. I walked back to the table and sat down. This time, I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten by Daniel. The ink was slightly faded, the paper soft from being held many times. My heart pounded as I unfolded it. "Anna, if you are reading this, then I am no longer there to protect you from her." I blinked. Her. He had written it plainly. No name, but I knew. The letter continued. "She came back 2 months ago. She found me at the clinic after one of my appointments and tried to convince me to change my will. I told her no, and she didn't take it well. I didn't tell you then because I didn't want to worry you, but if she is making noise now, it means she is trying something desperate." My breath hitched. I kept reading. "I want you to know the truth so you are not blindsided. Years ago, before I married you, she claimed she was pregnant. I didn't believe her, but she used the lie to threaten me. When I chose you anyway, she disappeared in anger. I thought the past was behind us, but some people don't let go." My hands trembled around the letter. Daniel continued, "There is no child. There never was. You were the only family I ever wanted. Everything I ever built is yours and Claire's. I made sure of that, legally, but she may try to challenge it." And then, at the bottom, one last line. "Show this letter only if you must. I'm leaving it in your hands, Anna. I trust you." I pressed the paper to my chest. Tears finally slipped free, the kind I had been holding back since the funeral. I didn't cry out. I didn't collapse. I simply sat there letting the grief wash through me. I whispered his name into the quiet room. "Daniel, why didn't you tell me sooner?" I sat like that for a long time, until the sun dipped behind the trees outside. I didn't know what Marissa wanted. I didn't know how far she would go, but I knew one thing with absolute clarity. Daniel had trusted me to protect our home, and I wasn't going to hand it over to a woman who had spent decades trying to steal something she never earned. Even if I had to walk into a courtroom alone, even if she tried to bury me under lies, even if I was grieving, I would stand my ground. For him, for us. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft ticking of the clock on the dresser. It sounded louder than usual, as if each second was nudging me towards something I wasn't ready to face. Every time I closed my eyes, Daniel's handwriting appeared behind my eyelids. She may try to challenge it, and she already had, even before his grave had settled. Around 3 a.m, I got up and went to the living room. The house was dim, lit only by the street lamp shining through the front window. I sat in Daniel's chair, the old leather one by the bookshelf, and wrapped his blanket around my shoulders. His scent still clung to it, faint but present, like a memory trying its best not to fade. I held the letter in my hands. I read it again, then again. The words cut deeper each time. The lie about a child, the threats, the secret meeting she ambushed him with at the clinic. He had carried all of that alone, quietly, to spare me worry. That was the kind of man he was. And now the burden of truth rested on my shoulders. Sometime near dawn, I must have drifted off. I woke to the sound of someone knocking, not gently, but firm, impatient. My heart jumped. For a split second, I thought it might be that lawyer again, or worse, her. I pulled the blanket tighter and walked to the door. When I opened it, my daughter stood there, holding a bag of groceries. "Mom, you didn't answer my texts. I thought I'd check on you." Relief flooded through me. "Oh, Claire, I'm sorry. I must have been distracted." She stepped inside and looked at me closely. "You look pale. Have you eaten?" "No." "I figured. That's why I brought food." She put the bag on the counter and began unpacking things. Bread, soup, fresh fruit. The simple sight of someone caring for me in such an ordinary way made my throat tighten. "Mom," she said to me, turning to me, "yesterday, at the funeral, you looked like you'd seen something." I swallowed. "I did." I walked to the table and picked up my phone. I showed her the message. Her eyes widened. "What? Mom, when was this?" "Right after the service ended." She sat down heavily. "This is insane. Who would send something like that?" I didn't speak. I simply placed the envelope in front of her. She unfolded the letter carefully. I watched her eyes move across the page. Halfway through, her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Mom, this woman, she's still around?" I nodded. "And she wants the estate?" "She sent a man to my door yesterday. A lawyer." She stared at me. "You're telling me she's trying to take what Dad left? After all these years?" "Yes." She shook her head, anger rising behind her eyes. "I can't believe this. She had decades to move on. Why now?"
"Because Daniel is gone," I said softly, "and she must think I'm an easy target." Claire took my hand. "She doesn't know you." Her voice wavered. I squeezed her fingers gently. We spent the morning going through papers, bank records, insurance documents, the official will, everything Daniel had carefully organized in a small wooden box he kept in his study. The will was clear, direct, everything split between me and Claire. No mention of anyone else, no surprises. But clarity alone doesn't stop greed. Around noon, I heard a car door slam outside. Claire looked at me. "Are you expecting someone?" I shook my head. We both stepped to the window. A sleek black car was parked in front of my house. A woman stepped out. Long dark coat, high heels, hair styled like she was walking into a magazine shoot. My stomach tightened. I didn't need Claire to ask. We both knew who it was. She walked up the driveway slowly, confidently, as if she had every right to be here. Claire whispered, "Is that her?" "Yes," I breathed. The knock came, sharp, cold. I opened the door only halfway. "Hello, Anna," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's been a long time." "Not long enough," I replied quietly. Her smile stiffened. "I came because things can be handled without courts. I'd prefer that, for everyone's sake." Claire stepped up beside me. "Who are you?" The woman's gaze flicked to her. "I'm someone with unfinished matters involving your father." "Unfinished?" Claire snapped. "You have no place here." But the woman ignored her and looked at me again. "I want what Daniel promised me, and I'm prepared to prove my claim." I felt something calm settle inside me, the kind of calm that comes when fear has burned itself out. "I said he promised you nothing, and I have his words to prove it." She blinked, just once. Then her voice hardened. "I'm giving you 3 days to reconsider. After that, my attorney will proceed." She turned and walked away before I could speak. When her car drove off, Claire slammed the door. "Mom, we need a lawyer, now." "Yes," I said, "but first, we need the truth." I went to Daniel's study. There, in the bottom drawer of his desk, was an old lockbox I had never seen before. The key was taped beneath the drawer, Daniel's usual hiding place for important things. Inside were documents, letters, photos, a journal page he had written months before he died. As I read through them, the shape of Daniel's struggle became clearer. He was afraid she'd come back. He had tried to protect me, and he knew, long before he died, what she would attempt. One line in his journal shattered me. "I thought she was gone for good, but the past has a way of returning when you're too tired to fight." I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling my heart twist. He had fought silently. He had carried this burden alone so I wouldn't have to. Claire whispered, "Mom, this wasn't just about money, was it?" "No, it never is." By evening, I had an appointment with a probate attorney. Claire insisted on staying the night, but I told her to go home to her children. I needed quiet. I needed space to think. Not from her, but for myself. That night, I sat at the dining table again, tea gone cold, letter laid out in front of me, rain tapping gently against the windows. Then another message pinged on my phone. Unknown number. My breath caught. This time it wasn't a threat. It was a voice recording. I tapped it open. Daniel's voice filled the room. "Anna, if she's come back, then I know you're scared, but you're stronger than you think. You always were. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, but trust what I've left for you. Use it, protect what we built." I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling my heart twist. I whispered into the quiet, "I will, Daniel. I promise." But I didn't know then just how far she would go. Because the next morning, the police knocked on my door. The knock at the door that morning was not hurried, but firm, official. The kind of knock that stops your breath mid-inhale. I had barely taken 2 sips of tea. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own pulse in your ears. When I opened the door, 2 uniformed officers stood on the porch. One man, one woman, both looking at me with polite seriousness. "Mrs. Whitaker?" the woman asked. "Yes," I replied, my voice thinner than I intended. "We'd like to speak with you for a moment. May we come in?" My fingers tightened around the doorframe. "Of course." They stepped inside. The woman officer walked slowly, looking around the living room, not suspiciously, just observant. The man removed his hat and held it respectfully in front of him. "We received a report that there may have been foul play involved in your husband's passing." I felt the room tilt. For a second, I thought I might faint. "Foul play?" I whispered. "Daniel died of cancer. He was under hospice care." "Yes, ma'am. This is just standard procedure when such a report is made. We're required to follow up." I swallowed hard.
Who filed the report? The two officers exchanged a brief glance. I am afraid we can't disclose that. But I already knew. Of course she had. She was starting early, trying to paint doubt even about his death. The woman officer softened her tone. This doesn't mean we suspect anything. We only need to ask a few routine questions, if that's all right. I nodded and sank onto the sofa, hands clasped in my lap. The man sat across from me, flipping open a small notebook.
When was the last time you saw your husband conscious? The night before he passed, I said quietly. He squeezed my hand. He was barely speaking by then. And you were present when he died? Yes. Was anyone else with you? My daughter came about an hour later. He nodded, jotting notes. Did he express any concerns? Anything unusual? My mind flickered to the letter, the recording, the fear he carried quietly. But the officer was asking about medical concerns, not secrets or past threats. No, I said softly. He was calm, at peace. The questioning went on, gentle but thorough, and all the while the weight inside me grew heavier. When they finally stood to leave, the woman officer paused at the door. I'm very sorry for your loss. Please don't worry. We see misunderstandings like this often. I nodded as they walked away. But when the door clicked shut, something inside me broke. I leaned against it and pressed a hand to my mouth to keep the cry from escaping. She had crossed a line I didn't think even she would cross. She wasn't just coming for the estate. She was coming for Daniel's memory. I walked to the kitchen, wiped my eyes, and called Claire. The moment she answered, I said, "She reported his death." Claire gasped. What? Mom, that's sick. She wants to make me unstable, or guilty, or vulnerable. We need to fight this legally. We need a plan. I have one. Because in Daniel's lockbox, hidden behind the journal pages, there was one more item I hadn't shown Claire yet. A flash drive. His handwriting on a small sticky note, for the lawyer. I didn't know what was on it, but I knew it mattered. Her words echoed inside me long after she disappeared down the courthouse corridor. You don't have the truth. It sank into my mind like a splinter, small but sharp, impossible to ignore. I tried telling myself it was just another tactic, another manipulation. But the way she said it, the certainty in her tone, it lingered. Claire noticed. She always did. In the car on the way home, she kept glancing at me. Mom, she said softly, don't let her get to you. She's angry she lost, that's all. I nodded, though my stomach was tight. Maybe. But that night when the house quieted and the lamps cast soft shadows across the living room, I sat with Daniel's letter in my hands again. I read every line slowly, carefully, as if there were hidden meanings between the sentences. I ran my fingers over his handwriting, the familiar loops and slants. The truth should have comforted me, yet somehow it frightened me. What truth did Marissa think I didn't know? What was she so confident I didn't know? Her threat wasn't about money, it was about knowledge. And the young woman, the one with the cold voice, she wasn't there to offer support. She was there because she knew something too. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake listening to the wind against the windows, thinking of every year, every conversation, every memory with Daniel. I thought about the things he kept quiet, the heavy silences, the tiredness in his eyes near the end, and slowly an unease crept in. What if Daniel had kept something back even in the letter, something he thought he was sparing me from, something bigger than a greedy ex-lover? I told myself I was imagining things,
Grief can twist shadows into shapes they aren't. But the next morning, when I went to his study to put the flash drive away, I noticed something I hadn't before. The bottom of the desk drawer, it looked uneven. I pressed lightly, it shifted. A false bottom. My heart thudded against my ribs as I lifted the thin panel. Beneath it lay another envelope, older. The edges yellowed, the flap sealed with tape instead of glue. Daniel's handwriting stretched across the front. For Anna, only if she forces her way back. My knees weakened. I sank into his chair and opened it. Inside were 3 things: a folded document, a photograph, and a handwritten note. I opened the note first. My love, if you are reading this, it means the past has risen in its darkest form. I prayed it wouldn't. I prayed that she would finally let go. But if she hasn't, then you deserve the full truth, even the truth that shames me. Please read the document carefully. It explains everything. I never wanted to hurt you. Forgive me. Daniel. My hands trembled as I unfolded the document. It wasn't a legal file. It was hospital paperwork, birth records, a paternity test from 21 years ago, the name printed under father, Daniel Whitaker, but the child's mother, Marissa Trent. My breath caught. He did have a child he never told me about. The photograph slipped from my fingers and fluttered onto the desk. A young woman, dark hair, sharp eyes, stood beside a teenage girl with a fierce, guarded expression. I recognized the young woman immediately. She was the one from the courthouse, the one who whispered the threat in my voicemail. She wasn't a hired accomplice. She was Daniel's daughter. I pressed my hand over my heart, trying to steady the ache spreading through my chest. The room blurred. My breath came shallow. Why didn't he tell me? Why didn't he ever tell me? I had been his wife for decades, his partner, his friend. Why hide a child? A dozen emotions twisted inside me: hurt, confusion, betrayal. But layered beneath all of them was something even heavier. He was ashamed. That's why he hid it. He was ashamed of the mistake, ashamed of the lie, ashamed of letting that woman manipulate him so deeply. But he loved that child. I could see it in the way he stood beside her in the photograph, his shoulders slightly angled toward her, the softness in his eyes. He had loved her, even if he didn't know how to include her in our life. I sat there for almost an hour, staring at the papers, the photo, the truth laid out like broken pieces on the desk. When Claire came by that afternoon, she found me still sitting there. Mom, are you all right? I held up the photograph. Claire, she's his daughter. Claire's face drained of color. What? No, Mom, are you sure? I handed her the documents. She read them quickly, her hands shaking. When she finished, she sat down beside me, swallowing hard. How could he hide something like this? I whispered, I think he thought he was protecting us. Protecting us, she said softly, or protecting himself. We didn't talk for a long time. We just sat there, staring at the faded hospital papers. Eventually, Claire said something that surprised me. Mom, if she's his daughter, then she might genuinely feel cheated. Yes, I whispered. She might. She stood and began pacing slowly. But the way she's going about it, threats, lies, manipulating police reports, that's not how a grieving daughter behaves. No, it isn't. She wants revenge, she murmured, not justice. I nodded. The truth had shifted everything. The enemy wasn't simple. She wasn't doing this for inheritance. She was doing it for pain, for the years she believed he abandoned her, for the wounds her mother probably fed her since childhood. A new understanding settled into my heart, heavy but strangely grounding. This wasn't a battle over money. This was a story of a woman growing up believing she was unwanted. A story of resentment passed down like a family heirloom. But still, threats were threats, and danger was real. Claire leaned against the bookshelf. "Mom, what are you going to do?" I didn't answer immediately, because inside me something quietly changed. Grief and betrayal had softened into something else. Not forgiveness yet, not acceptance, but clarity. "I'm going to face her," I said finally. "Mom, are you sure?" "Yes, she deserves the truth from someone who isn't trying to hurt her. And I deserve answers too." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but call me the moment you're done." "I will." And later that evening, with Daniel's envelope tucked inside my coat, I drove to the address listed on the paternity documents. A small apartment complex at the edge of town. Dimly lit walkways, quiet, still. My steps echoed as I climbed the stairs to the second floor. I stood in front of the door, my heart beating slowly, steadily. I knocked. Footsteps approached. The lock clicked. The door opened. The young woman, the daughter, stood there. Her guarded eyes met mine. Her hand tightened on the doorknob. "Why are you here?" she asked sharply. I took a slow breath. "Because I know who you are, and you deserve to hear the truth from someone who loved him too." For the first time, uncertainty flickered in her eyes. She didn't close the door. And that was the moment everything began to change.